Hello and welcome to the channel where today I am incredibly excited to discuss the new Genestealer Cult Codex. So who better to join me than Eric Tadt from Brood Brothers Broadcasting. Thanks for being here, man.
Hey, yeah, nice to be here. I'm glad I'm back on the channel. I'm also very excited for this Codex as well.
Yeah, I should say, but you are the number one Genestealer Cult player in the world. So I think you can provide a pretty good perspective here. So how are you feeling about the book? Are you happy? Are you not happy? Where are you feeling?
No matter what, honestly, what this Codex gave me, as long as it was something new, I was getting so bored of the old Codex, I'm excited.
Yeah.
But after reading the Codex, I feel like it's a very good Codex. Maybe not like top tier and broken, which is not at all where I want to be. I want to be definitely in the middle of the pack.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited. I get to try a lot of new things, and I always love list building. That's maybe one of my favorite parts of new Codexes.
Yeah, I'm the same. Regularly just on Battlescribe when I should be working. So let's jump in then. So yeah, we are both so happy with this, and we thought it would be fun to do maybe a bit of a different take because you kind of went through the whole Codex on your podcast. So let's go through our favorite things from the book. So where did you want to start on the list, Eric?
I guess we could start with the overall rules. So maybe Underground?
Interesting. Underground. So deep striking in 8th edition was not great. We couldn't do it reliably. You didn't see many players taking a huge amount of their army in deep strike before. However, now this is much more viable, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it definitely shows that we are the deep striking Codex. I just felt as more Codexes came out, especially in 8th and then also 9th, other Codexes just did deep strike better. And I felt like that was the Genestealer Cult motto, was like, we are the deep strike Codex, but everyone does it better than us. So now that I feel with this new Codex, we also have our own shtick in it, and it helps out the Codex a lot more.
I mean, just deep striking 8 inches away, pretty sensational. And when you couple that with the fact that you can actually go 6 inches away, I know everybody was very familiar with the strat in 8th edition, but just getting this as a flat rule, not only will it catch people out, it will also force people to play much more conservatively when it comes to being on objectives. You can no longer toe poke an objective and think you'll be fine. This is excellent, in my opinion.
The reason I like this so much is that not only do we not have to worry about spending 2 CP all the time for line and weight in the old strat, like when it was a strat in 8th edition, but now we just have it on every model. Anything can do it whenever you want. No, it can't charge, but 6 inches is so hard to screen against, so I'm just going to not bother screening this out. And now you just saved yourself 4 CP from line and weight to get in the backfield for like scramblers or teleport homewards or something like that.
Yeah, we've seen a bit of CA 2022, of course, from some of the tournaments over in the States. And of course, some of the actions there can only be done reliably by units like Acolytes. So although it's a bit worse for us generally, it's much worse for everyone else. And so by virtue is kind of better for us, is the way I kind of look at it.
Yeah, it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend almost style, right?
Yeah. And I guess the other thing that we can now do with our deep striking mechanics is charge out of deep strike, which is the standard thing and the thing you want to do. But before it was too unreliable. And now, you can even lean into Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor for the rerolls. You can get a +1 from the Acolyte Icon Ward. And there's an upgrade even to get a charge on 3 dice, discarding the lowest. And that provides an incredibly reliable deep strike. So it's just back on the menu, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Well, a lot of people were saying, oh, we get +1 to our charge out of deep strike. But it's way more than that. An 8-inch charge is way different than a +1 charge from 9 inches away, because now you can actually have access to trying to get other things like tag further into their backfield by a whole inch. So it's actually a lot different. Yeah. It's a lot stronger. They have to block out more of their backfield now, because before you could just measure 9 inches and people would just barely get that. Now they have to do 8-inch blockouts for characters. That's so much more they have to spread out, which is going to thin their front of their lines as well.
Absolutely, it's so powerful. And whilst we're on this topic, I just wanted to cover one stratagem here. We're not going to have a specific section dedicated to stratagems in this video, but we will mention them as they come up. And the one that is relevant here is Return to the Shadows.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal stratagem.
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorites, the Return to the Shadows for 1 CP. I forgot where I was, but I was making up stratagems that I'd like to see, and I was like, yeah, that'd be cool if they had like a 2 CP or 3 CP strat that did this, and then I read this, I was like, oh my god, that's it, and it's 1 CP. I think it's so strong because the way my 8th edition Codex used to work is I would send out 10 Acolytes, I would kill something, and then I just expected them to die because that's how it worked. But now I can do that with a much more expensive unit, kill something, and then bounce them back and not have to worry about trading a giant expensive unit. So I can more reliably
Yeah.
buff units to kill big units and not worry about trading them because they can bounce back.
I mean, it was already really good being able to put a unit back into Deep Strike for the mission. But now this is, like you say, getting to use your big hammer blob twice. The second Deep Strike might not be as reliable because you only get access to the 3d6 discarding the lowest the first time. However, it's still such a game changer. It's absolutely massive. I'm a big fan.
We have the line and wait. I think it's still good, but I think it's better in the middle to lower tables. So if you plan on being there a lot more,
Yeah.
I would think it's good. But once you get to the upper tables, a lot of the higher end players will just know how to prevent you from touching their objectives. And unless they're really getting tabled or they really make a mistake, it's just a waste of 20 points to get within 3 inches to try to grab a primary objective.
Okay, so on to the second point then that we're going to discuss today, which is around the Codex balance in this book. So here what we're talking about is the fact that pretty much all of the cults have some play, most of the stratagems have got good use, pretty much all of the units have got good use, and over time, yes, probably there will be a tendency for people to build a certain way, but we definitely think it is fair to say that most of the units in this book have some definite play, and you will be fine taking most things from the GSC range.
Yeah, and I think another good point is as the meta changes, we couldn't really switch our old codex as much to meet those demands.
Yeah.
But with this codex, I feel like you could be like, all right, we need more of this now, so this creed, and so now we can build around this army. And the internal balance will really help with that.
Yeah. I think another thing that I thought would be good for you to talk about, because you've sent me many pieces of maths, or math as you call it, over the last couple of days, because you are quite interested in finding out what the best weapons options are for the Acolytes, as I'm sure a lot of people are. And actually, we get some really interesting results, don't we? So where are you leaning for people wondering how to build their Acolytes?
There's a couple caveats when you do this. It's almost like a flowchart. So I think if you're not building stuff to help you hit better in melee or ignore stuff, so you're not taking Industrial Affinity, you're not taking Pomper Princes, you're not taking any of that. Saws are okay in small doses. So if you're taking like a 5-man, saws are fine. After that, you want to take cutters and drills. Now, cutters and drills are very similar in the damage output. As you do the math, the drill does better based on how much defense the enemy has. So if they have trans, drills become better. If they have a 4-up invul, drills become better. If they have -1 damage, drills become better. But cutters are just naturally always going to be better on the first output, and the more of the defense buffs that the enemy stacks, drills become better. So it's one of those things where like you need to think about what do you want, cutters or drills. And I feel like I'm leaning towards cutters current meta, but I might start to do drills. But drills do better the more you have in a unit. So I wouldn't put drills on a 5-man unit. So they're very spiky, and that's the difference, is that drills are really spiky, so you need more rolls in order to make it level out.
So let's move on then to the third point that I've got written down here for us, which is Crossfire. So why are you so excited about Crossfire? I think a lot of people say, well, we've gone up in points at the same time. Why are you excited for this?
I just hated always hitting on 5s against half the armies because because you'd like roll out and your Ridge Runners are, Ballistic Skill 4. So we went up a little bit in points, but we now pretty much just have, if you build your list around it, +1 to hit, which is now my army is just a Ballistic Skill 3 army, and then +1 to wound, which is insane.
And I think it's also worth mentioning that it's actually easy to get Crossfire through things like the Nexus, and there are some stratagems to help you out. Exactly as you say, I completely agree. It's like getting an extra ballistic skill, which is pretty awesome. So I absolutely adore it. And it's got to be worth mentioning as well that things like ignoring cover are actually far better than you might think. Things are very regularly getting cover saves. And also I wanted to just mention that there are some pretty dynamite strats coming with Crossfire, most notably turning off things like Overwatch and Heroic Intervention, making things fight last. These are amazing. I absolutely adore these strats.
Yeah, the only downfall with our ignore cover stuff is I wish we had more indirect fire, because I feel like that would definitely help ignoring cover on indirect fire.
Okay, interesting. So I think as well, the final thing I just wanted to mention, because it kind of leads on to my next point, which is that one of the benefits from Crossfire is that I quite like that it does mean if you do want to take things like Ridge Runners, they're not reliant on standing next to those characters. Even things like neophytes and trucks, they don't have to be near the characters. However, I did want to talk about the characters as their own point, because I know you're of the belief that actually they've pretty much all gotten better.
Yes, I've been pretty adamant of saying like I would take almost any character in this codex except the melee Sanctus and the Abominant. The melee Sanctus, I'd rather just take maybe 5 more Acolytes over that guy if I had the option, because he's just that bad. But everyone else in here, if I saw it in a codex or on a list, I would be like, I could see that. So one of my favorites is the Nexus. I think he got a real big glam up. He literally became the new Jackal Elphis. So the Jackal Elphis in 8th edition was like, if you're near me, I can look at something within 36 inches and then let everyone around me within 6 get +1 to hit. The Nexus just goes, I pick literally anything on the board and everyone gets +1 to hit against it. Every turn. Like that's it's just
absolutely awesome.
Insanely better. And then he also has his strategic coordination ability, which goes, well, if you don't want to get your Primus within 6 inches of a unit to give him a buff, well, guess what? Be near me and I'll just go tell that unit across the board to get buffed. So now our buffs are wherever you want on the board as long as they're next to the Nexus. And then we also have another stratagem to go along with it, which lets our Magus or Patriarch cast powers on models that are across the board. So now we can be this more reliable Deep Strike army getting buffs from our characters that don't want to put those characters necessarily in danger, which then makes them harder to kill, because now we can just shove these guys in the back corner and be like, alright, you guys sit here, and you guys buff the stuff 48 inches away with your 6-inch aura buffs, but you don't need to worry about that because you have the Nexus.
No, absolutely. I really like it. I think that he kind of makes the Primus viable. In my eyes, I'm not entirely sure I would take him without the Nexus, because you kind of just have to commit the Primus and then he dies. Yep. Having him have the ability to stay back for multiple turns. I think it's also worth mentioning the Primus because he also has a pretty great combat boost, primarily from one of the relics you can take, in my opinion, which is a flat 3 damage claw. It hits on 2s, wounds on 2s, -2, 3 damage. I think that's pretty great. It's not the greatest character in the game, but not every character can be the greatest character in the game. So I'm pretty happy with him.
Yeah,
really.
You give him that, and then I also like to give him the +1 attack, +1 toughness warlord trait, because I don't take the Patriarch.
Yeah.
And so he's got his 6 attacks hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s, except against Titanic and vehicles. But yeah, he's pretty good. And he's got toughness 5, just to give him a little bit more tough. The only downfall is that he does have a command phase buff, so unless he's doing his special thing on something that's already in the game, you can't like have something Deep Strike and him already be on the board and then give it to them, or you can't have something get out of a truck and him give it to him, which is why I like a couple other units that we can talk about later.
I think it's worth mentioning the rule that says you can use command abilities after Deep Striking, which is pretty significant, I think, as a buff. I think one character that I am so happy that he's at least good, I don't know if he's one of the best. I'm definitely going to take him though in most of my armies because he is my best painted model because I didn't paint him, which is the Biophagus. I adore this model so much and his familiar, and so I'm glad that he's got some play. You can now give his buffs to core as well as aberrants, which is pretty great, and a 5 at Feel No Pain is really nothing to be scoffed at, is it?
No, he definitely got a glam up as well. The only thing I wish is that his familiar maybe let you pick an ability for core unit instead of having to still roll on it. It does give you so you can be 18 inches away, which is really helpful.
There is an upgrade for him.
Yeah, there is the upgrade, but I wish you could make it more reliable, right?
Yeah, I guess as well, whilst I mentioned the upgrade there, is that there is the upgrade for the Primus, which is actually, I think, reasonably significant. So a lot of armies have had to change how they play due to the fact that characters can't give their buffs to non-core, and actually there's an upgrade here to allow the Primus to do that. And I think reroll once to wound on 6 Ridge Runners is nothing to shy away from, is it?
It's pretty good for that to make sure you get that Alpha Strike out there. But yeah, he's pretty good. Yeah. A lot of those upgrades are really good. I like them all.
And then the Kellamorph, everyone's favorite gunslinger. Do you think he makes the cut for your list?
He definitely makes the cut. I like all the shenanigans you can do. A lot of people are kind of down that he has only 1 damage instead of 2, but he did get an extra strength. He does have increased range, and he does do mortals on 6s, which no, it's not as good as damage 2 necessarily. In some situations it is. It just makes his damage more reliable, because he does only have -1 AP, but his shoot move is really strong. And so what I want to use him as is he's got a couple different scenarios. One of them is you can put him in a Rockgrinder. It's not open top. You can get out 9 inches, shoot, and then get back in the Rockgrinder. Yeah. And then another one is he can Deep Strike, shoot, move, and then go grab an objective in the backfield.
I like that. That's pretty tasty. As much as damage 2 would have been really nice to keep, because of the fact that you're basically using him for multiple turns now. Like if you get him for 2 turns at damage 1 as opposed to 1 turn at damage 2, kind of going to be fine in my point. And actually, exactly talk about, we've got a longer range at 18. He moves 6 and you embark 3. So actually, that's a 27-inch threat range from a Rockgrinder to whatever he's going to shoot, and then he's safe in that Rockgrinder. That's pretty significant, I think. So yeah, definitely a buff in my eyes. And you can apply the reroll ones as you need it.
Yeah, and he can also actually kind of be a line of sight shooting weapon too, because you could hide your Rockgrinder to one side of terrain, move him out, shoot behind it, move him back into a Rockgrinder, where the Rockgrinder doesn't have line of sight to that model. I personally like the Sanctus with the gun. The reason why is because he's got a better version of Clandestine, which a lot of people are really pumped about. He doesn't have to be in terrain to not be shot at. He just can't be shot at unless you're within 12 inches. So he can definitely hold it back at objective if they're not fast enough, and then you never have to worry about him ever getting shot. And then he auto hits, so that's just like saying you have another Nexus where he just picks a unit in range and just gives them a Crossfire token, because he's just going to auto hit.
Yeah, he can still blow up Psychers, which is fun.
Yeah, strat.
I think the Clamavus, we'll just kind of cover quickly, I do like him. I like his buffs. I think it's an improvement. And the thing about those buffs is that they will win you some games, is how I look at them. They absolutely will do. Like, if you can take away OBSEC, absolutely sensational. You will also have games, though, in my opinion, where he's just not really going to do anything. But if you're dependent on that ability to shoot and do actions, I'd probably recommend you going Hive Cult, personally. So I'm not sold on him for the purposes of my army, but it's not to say that he's bad. And if you do take him, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think he's got cheekiness involved in his thing. He can do some fun, cute plays, but I would not use him as my game plan. I just don't like that his Voice of New Truths, he needs to roll 3d6 for it to happen. I don't like that his strat, you need to roll 3 or better for it to happen. I don't like his relic really that much. I feel like if all those things didn't have rolls involved, he would be really good. But I feel like having to have stuff where you need him, then you need to be within range, then you need to have the target that you want to also be there in the game, and then you also need to roll and then also beat this roll. I think that's too many hoops you need to jump through for I turned off OBSEC, personally.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And then just to quickly mention the Patriarch, our glorious leader, we think he's maybe just a smidge too expensive to justify in a lot of lists. However, he does still deal some decent damage, he has access to those awesome powers, and there are some relics that you can put on him that make him particularly interesting, so in some cults especially, I think he's a good choice. There are a few more just characters to go through, so the Saboteur, kind of been covered at this point. I definitely think she's fine in a list, especially if you're in a meta with a lot of vehicles and monsters. I think that can be pretty good. The Magus is a really interesting one. She provides psychic support that is pretty amazing from my point of view. And then the Abominant, which you mentioned before, so he is better. He no longer has the -1 to hit, but he still only has 3 attacks. So I'm not sure I'm going to take it, unless the meta is to take just loads and loads of Aberrants. That aura is pretty good in that case. How do you feel about the Locust? Cheeky at 50 points. What do you reckon?
He has so much shenanigans he can pull off that people have to always be aware of when they go in. Not only is he an okay melee threat because he just has 2 damage melee weapons, but he just has that one built-in stratagem that Blood Angels have. The one where if you're a character, you can say, you can't fight anyone else, you have to fight me. He has that built into his profile where if he goes into melee with his ward, you can't fight the ward. So I charge you with the Locust and his ward. You have to fight my Locust back. You can't fight the other guy that I went into melee with. He also lets you do some cheeky bodyguard plays. I could have a 10-man Neophyte unit hiding behind a wall, and then I have the Locust within 3 inches of that unit, and then I have my ward within 3 inches of the Locust. So now you can kind of pull that stupid Celestine play with the bodyguard rule, because he can't get targeted. So you can do some stupid plays like that too, but I don't know if I would take him.
It's not as valuable on us though, is it? I don't think really. Okay, and then we've got 2 left. I think we'll mention the Acolyte Icon Ward in a bit. I'm sure people can figure out why. But the last one to mention is the Jackal Alphas. How are you feeling about the Alphas?
I probably wouldn't take her. It's just mostly because the HQs are so crazy right now and what you want to take. She kind of falls out of preference because I used to take her to give +1 to hit, but I don't need to worry about that anymore.
All right, let's move on then to the next point. You were saying before we started how you actually like pretty much every relic. I guess we won't have time to go through all of them, but just quickly, I guess. So which are your favorite relics and why?
So my top 3 favorite relics is I really like the Unwilling Orb. I think that's one of my favorite relics. You can deny stuff at the beginning of the game. You're playing people, they will be like, alright, I'm 24.1 inches away, you can't deny me. But now you can be like, no, I can deny you no matter what. Or someone goes first and they need to go first because they need to get that psychic defensive buff off, so they want to do that. They know they're outside of deny range, but now they're not. It's going to definitely play a little bit more mind games, and I really like it. We already talked about one of the other ones I liked. It's the same one you like, which is the Hand of Aberrance, which is the Primus weapon. I also like that one. And then my last one would have to be Cranial Inlay.
Okay.
That's the Nexus only model, and it just lets you get CP back on a 5-up whenever you spend them, because I'm going to be using lots of CP. It's nice to have that.
Yeah, I do really like the orb. I'm also really tempted just to go with the Crouchling, though, because I think reroll psychic tests, super reliable. That's worth a lot of CP over the course of the game. And the undeniable casts is a nice buff.
Yeah.
So let's move on then to creeds. I spoke about this when we talked about the internal balance. How do you feel about the creeds? Where are you leaning to? What do you want to play with?
I think I like the custom creeds. I think that's where I first got pulled to. I feel like the pre-made creeds are just as good, almost in some situations, but the custom creeds are just that a little bit better. And if we're going to go specifically in the custom creeds, it's pretty much Industrial Affinity and Impassioned is my 2 favorite. I can also see a play for Industrial Affinity, Deep Supplies, and War Convoy, but I feel like the first one I want to try is Impassioned and Industrial Affinity.
And then in terms of the set custom creeds, which of those do you like?
I really like most of them, honestly, but it would either be Hive Cult or Pump of Princes at first. I feel like they have good play. Hive Cult's better in the missions. Pump of Princes, I think you can make some really cool lists around, but I could see myself playing a lot of these and just trying out different things. I feel like all those have play, and the Hive Cult and Pump of Princes just have a little bit more play.
I do really like the 5-up invuln. I guess it depends how much I'm going to lean into our next point. However, I think this is probably my favourite of the defensive buffs. So I guess we'll see.
I feel like Blade Cog would be the best for Aberrants, where you just put the 2 CP buff on like 20 Aberrants. You know, you spend 4 CP, now you have 20 Aberrants with 5-up invuln, and now they're just super tanky.
Yeah, but like we say, we're very happy with the creeds. We think actually all of them are pretty good, so please feel free to play around with them. And yeah, I guess we'll see in a couple of weeks once GSC win LVO what creeds are actually putting away. So let's move on then to the penultimate point, which is the Atalan Jackals. I think these guys kind of made out the Codex a bit of a steal at 12 points per model.
Yes, I feel like that's one of my favorite overall units in the entire Codex, just with how much glam up they got. Like, when I started reading, I was like, oh, they get that. Oh, they also get this. Oh, they also... I just kept on saying, oh, they also get this. And then I was like, how many points are they? And I was like, oh, that was it. I feel like they're really good. I don't think they're still broken compared to some other things that you can do in the game with some other models that exist. Looking at you, Dark Eldar. But I feel like they are one of our strongest units. And I feel like every time I make a list, it starts off with 30 Atalan Jackals.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. If you cast your mind back, you will remember the Space Marine book dropping, and the Chief Apothecary had an ability to resurrect the ATV, and people were very unhappy about this. I will say it didn't actually make much dent in the meta, it seems. However, it was something that people really didn't like playing against. And what we get with the Acolyte Icon Ward, who I said I mentioned now, is the ability to resurrect D3 Atalan Jackal models, or just any core unit, D3 models, which you could use to resurrect 2 Wolf Quads, for example.
Yep.
And if you do that, that is 78 points of models, and ATV is, I believe, 80 points of model. And so it's actually pretty similar to one of the things people were very unhappy about in this edition. So I wonder how this is going to go down. I wonder whether that was an intention from Games Workshop, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I feel like we still are a lot easier to kill. I mean, it's still a T4 4-up save model.
That's true.
Where the other thing was a lot tougher. But yeah, bringing them back is insane. It makes them probably the tankiest unit in our list.
And how do you feel about the weapon options on the Atalan Jackals? I think the one that I'm most interested in your opinion on is the close combat weapon. It's a 3-point upgrade, but you get 2 attacks each, strength 4, -2, 1 damage. Is that worth it in your eyes?
I don't think I want to. I feel like if I did, I would take off the las cannons, off wads,
Okay.
and I'd just give them heavy stubbers, and
Yeah.
then I'd use those points. It's like one of those two options. Like, you're either going to give the wolf quads 2 lasers, or you're going to give them all picks.
Because they move, a pre-game move of 9 inches plus a 14-inch move, that's 23 inches turn 1, and they could start harassing things, tying things up. I'm interested to see how people play with them.
Yeah, you could also spend 1 CP to make them auto-advance 6, and then give them Psychic Stimulus, they can charge still.
So yeah, incredibly fast. But yeah, pretty good firepower, and I think actually not bad compared to even the Ridge Runners. They provide some pretty good support there.
The benefit to that is that if you take the 2 Mine Lasers, you will always get 2 shots, where the Ridge Runner is D3. So each Ridge Runner is D3 shots, but this, you'll always get 2 shots. So it makes it a little bit more stabilized, which is why I like bringing the Mine Lasers on these than the Ridge Runners currently. I just wish the Ridge Runners were more reliable.
And so on to the final point that we wanted to talk about today, which is, of course, the Genestealer Cult Dreadnoughts. So how are you feeling about these guys, Aaron?
Yeah, the Rockgrinders are so good. When I was looking at them, I was looking at all they do, and I was like looking at their points, like, this seems just like a Dreadnought at this point. It's just a Dreadnought with 5.
Yeah, I remember you messaged me, and I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, it's just our Dreadnought, but it also can hold 6 guys. So I feel like they're really strong. They do everything well. I always bring my demo caches. They have 3 guns at that point. They have their heavy seismic cannon, which got to glam up. They have their demo cache, which is good. And then they also have, they're stubber, but who cares about that? But then when they hit, they have their +1 to hit in melee, which never degrades. They will always hit on 3s. Their attacks get degrade a little bit, but you have charging, you have 8 attacks hitting on 3s. Like, that's so good, strength 8. So they also are a melee threat now, and you have to actually worry about it because it's not 50-50 shot, and then they also get creeds. So all of that stuff that we just talked about is industrial weapons, so you can never make it worse to hit than a 3-up or a 2-up when he charges. So he hits you on 2s in melee, and you can't make it worse to hit because he's got industrial affinity.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely awesome. It's such an array of buffs for really not a high points increase. So yeah, love it. Absolutely love the Rockgrinders.
Oh yeah, I'm currently painting up my 3 Jewel Dozer blades right now just so I can make sure I start playing with them.
What would you embark on them, if anything?
I feel like you could embark a couple things. I think I'm going to have 1 with Aberrants in it, a couple with Metamorphs in it, but I could also see Acolytes just because you can push up the board, they have to blow it up, it's super hard to kill, and then when you do, you just poop out, OBSEC models on an objective. So it just makes it even more annoying. I also like the Metamorphs and the Aberrants just so I have that really tanky unit for the abs when I get up there that can really hammer home something, and then I can send them out, they kill something, then I bounce them back into a deep strike, and so now I can use them again. I can put them out behind terrain maybe, and then move them out further later in the game. And then the Metamorphs also, if they blow up the tank and it sits there, it's hard for them to get to that objective because when they kill the Metamorphs, they will kill you back, and so they can also help with that as well.
Yeah, that's pretty great. Very good advice. And I think that is everything that we wanted to cover for our top 8 favourite things there. It's such a great book. I'm absolutely loving it. I can't really point out any big holes in this codex at this point in time. We'll see how powerful it is. We're kind of giving our prediction as to how great we think it is at this point, but I guess we'll see. Happy to be proven wrong. But yeah, so thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And as I say, if you want to see Eric's full breakdown of the Codex, you can do that by looking at his channel, which is on YouTube, Brew Brothers Broadcasting. It should be in the description of this video. So go check that out if you're a big GSC fan. But thank you very much for watching this video. I hope it was really useful for you, and I'll see you in the next one.